I'm Angela Benton. I'm the CEO of NewMe, an accelerator for minorities, and today I'm here talking with Moguldom. I moved from Silicon Valley to Miami really to be closer to the people that we work with. So through our analytics, I was able to see that most of the people that were coming to NewMe when we were based on the West Coast were actually coming from the East Coast. So that was really, I guess, the trigger for me moving initially. However, I do think it reflects a trend in the startup industry and the venture capital community around, I guess, more diverse ways to find funding, more diverse ecosystems for funding. While Silicon Valley is still the #1 place to get funding for a technology company, there are a lot of smaller ecosystems where there's a ton of really great activity and a ton of success going on. What I liked about living in Silicon Valley was there's a ton of really, really smart people. So conversations are great. You're always learning something, even when you're not expecting to learn something. So that was really great and satisfying intellectually. What I didn't like about Silicon Valley is there's a bit of an echo chamber. And so what that basically means is, you know, you might have the top 5 or 10 people in tech have a certain viewpoint on something, and then everybody else kind of follows that viewpoint instead of making their own kind of decisions or opinions on, you know, what should and shouldn't be. Also, another thing that I didn't like was obviously the lack of diversity there in the industry. Now, when we launched in Silicon Valley, so we made a lot of headway, and it's much more diverse than when I first moved there. However, when you're trying to partner with other people and you're trying to get people to support this bigger idea and mission around diversifying technology, if they don't get it and they don't really understand it, that can be a frustrating conversation to have. So that's one of the biggest things that I don't miss. A lot of things changed in Silicon Valley since 2011 when CNN did their Black in America documentary special on Silicon Valley and NewMe. I think, honestly, I think a lot has changed, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a lot of work that still needs to be done. When we first launched, there really weren't a lot of Black entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley at all. And now there's a ton of Black entrepreneurs that have their own goals. Some of them are trying to raise capital, some of them aren't. And so, you know, I think that's also what's really interesting about what's happening here in the technology industry as of late. You have different types of entrepreneurs. Not everybody's, you know, trying to be the next Facebook or the next Snapchat or the next Instagram. And of course you have, you know, those companies that are trying to build really, really big companies, but you also have, you know, smaller companies that, you know, they're okay with being $100 million company. Do I think Black people can be successful in the technology industry without directly addressing some of the protagonists in Silicon Valley by name? No, actually I don't. I think part of, well, what I learned from being on Black in America is it was very interesting, and I think we were able to make headway because, you know, I had some contacts that were there from my previous business, Black Web 2.0, but none of the investors really knew me there. Like I wasn't plugged into the investment community. So that special caught a lot of people off guard. It was kind of like a sneak attack in a way. And right now, in terms of solving the diversity issue, everything is on the table. Everything is somewhat upfront. But I think there needs to be another kind of movement that's more of like a sneak attack where other people don't see it coming. There's a lot of different conversations that happen within Silicon Valley that need to be exposed. There's people in Silicon Valley that I think need to be exposed, and actually maybe exposed isn't the right word, but we need to ask questions, and they need to be direct questions, and we need to get answers on, even outside of funding, why, Google and Facebook, their diversity numbers haven't grown. Diversity numbers haven't grown in the technology industry the whole year and the year before that. But yet there's all of these diversity efforts. So nothing's really changing, but they love to do a dog and pony show with whatever Black executive or entrepreneur to show that they're diverse when the numbers are saying otherwise. Why haven't there been more pressure from endowments and pension funds on venture capital funds around the diversity issue? I'm not sure. I think somebody needs to ask that question, to be honest. And, a lot of the pension funds, they come from, everyday workers. A lot of them are from communities of color. So, taking that money and investing it into, XYZ tech fund, there should be more guidance outside of like financial return on how the money is invested from a diversity perspective. Like how many companies are minority companies that are pulling from the same communities that the funds from the pension funds are coming from. What advice would I give to other self-publishers who want to write a book, who have to market their own book? For me, writing a book was something that I always wanted to do, but the timing was never really right. And so I felt like, while I was going through my chemo treatments, that I had extra time on my hands, and I also had all of this perspective on life that I didn't have before. So the timing was just right for me. It is very hard to do. I will say that. I think the biggest challenge is staying focused and staying dedicated to it. And then in terms of marketing my book, I felt like I took, to be honest, kind of like an old school approach. I actually didn't run too many ads against my book. I focused more on press and publicity around my book. And then my book was really kind of my entree into more of a creative life, where I have a creative background, but I've been working on NewMe for so long. I've been kind of in the business realm. And so for me, writing the book, doing the cover, and commissioning an artist to do the cover, and producing a short film on the cover art, all of that was very much a creative process for me. And it was me wanting to, and saying that, outside of me taking a balanced approach in life, like holistically, like with my health, like creatively and intellectually, I'm going to have a more balanced life too, where it's not going to 100% be all business. I'm going to satisfy some of the creative needs that I have as well. So anyway, long story short, I was really more so focused on the process. I was very engaged and present in the process. Some of the success stories in NewMe, there are a ton. I actually feel like every entrepreneur that I work with is a success story. It's not necessarily about raising funding. So, we have Kairos, who raised, a little over $8 million. That's great. And they're an artificial intelligence company. And I started working with him in 2012 when AI wasn't huge. So, that's a really, really exciting portfolio company that I have. But everyone that I work with, I have a cohort right now. I'm excited about Stack, which is a new way to offer alternative financing to people who are unbanked or underbanked. So that's an interesting company to me. Another interesting company that we have is Beauty Supply Express, which it's basically like Uber for like beauty supply stores, so you don't actually have to go. So that's another interesting company. And while both of those companies are so new and so young, they haven't raised any capital yet. I've had an amazing time working with them and helping them on their business, and those will be successes once I'm done working with them, regardless if they raise money or not, because I was able to share some of the information that I have around fundraising or growing your business that, you know, a lot of people in Silicon Valley may think that it's rudimentary or may think that everybody knows this information, but everybody doesn't know this information. So me being able to share some of that wisdom and my own personal wisdom, that's a success. That's a huge success. Cryptocurrency and blockchain is something that's really interesting to me. The role that I see, or if I even see a role in it in my business, would definitely be around a fund. And so most people who raise venture capital funds, you know, we talked about raising it from, you know, larger institutional investors and pension funds and the like. It's really interesting to me, and I've been thinking about what it would look like to raise a fund purely with cryptocurrency. And what would it look like for that fund to invest in minority companies? To me, it's interesting because it sounds very similar, and I think it's one of the most recent opportunities that we have in kind of modern day society to recreate the Black Wall Street kind of phenomenon that took place years and years ago. So that's what's super interesting to me. In order for us to make change, it has to be about the money. It has to be about capital. And cryptocurrency and blockchain technology allows us to do that. You know, it allows us to really take that into our own hands without having to, you know, beg someone for capital. It seems like it's more of a meritocracy than the current venture capital system. Also, on top of that, there have been a ton of companies that have done ICOs, which are basically like IPOs, but with cryptocurrency. And even in this year alone, I think I was reading, just like this year, this 12-month period, $2.7 billion have been raised with cryptocurrency. And so that's huge. So there's a ton of opportunity, but what troubles me the most is that we are not going to be in on that. And when I say we as a people, Black people, are going to be behind. And we're not really going to be able to benefit off of that. Some stuff that people can do to get ahead. So if you are an entrepreneur, like first and foremost, always focus on your product, work on your product. But, you know, if you have to raise money, then you don't necessarily have to go to venture capitalists first. I think I actually meet a ton of entrepreneurs who get caught up and infatuated with the idea of raising money. It's like they feel more successful just talking about venture capital, but you're not. And you know, I think cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and the other currencies that exist are an interesting way for you to raise smaller amounts of capital to get you going before you even talk to VCs. So I feel like the whole ecosystem is kind of being disrupted in a sense, whereas people would go to, you know, angel investors, VCs, they would kind of take that path. Now there's ICOs that need to kind of, or that are really making headway. So, you know, you don't necessarily have to do angel or friends and family and then angel and then a VC fund. You might do friends and family and then an ICO and then go straight to, you know, a venture capitalist. And the venture capitalist might more so play a role instead of being early stage capital, they may be like mid stage. You know, when I started NewMe, everyone was giving me advice like my business model, I should have a fund. Because right now, what I really do, I make connections between entrepreneurs at the right time to investors. But I really did not feel like, well, first off, the short-term upside, meaning the carry on the fund, wouldn't be enough to cover my operating expenses at the time. So it didn't make sense for me to do a fund, and that's why I never did it. And then also, we were so young and so new. We were really actually still refining our programming. And when you're raising a fund, that's serious business. That's your full-time job. So I really didn't have the capacity in terms of time to actually devote to raising a fund at the time. Now things are definitely a lot different with my business, and then even just, the stage of life that I'm in. And so that's something that's interesting to me. And I think it's interesting for accelerators in general to, maybe use, to start to explore other ways to raise funding outside of the traditional way. So it's not just entrepreneurs who are building some kind of blockchain technology or, are utilizing tokens in some kind of way that have an opportunity to disrupt. It's also, people who are investors or, who might want to raise a fund. So yeah, I think it's a very interesting time in terms of blockchain technology. For more information, you can follow me on Instagram at Benton, and of course you can check out me and other multicultural leaders and disruptors on Moguldom.